My name is Yanni Kokos, and I am the head coach and owner at Oli Performance. Today, I want to let you all in on how I help my weightlifters train around pain and injury. So I think the best place to start is a case study, right? Like a real life example of somebody that has pain with weightlifting, right? Because nobody likes mush. Nobody likes some random advice. So let's start with maybe the shoulder. Okay, so one of my weightlifters has shoulder pain with a split jerk, right? So they come to me, I'm having pain in the front of my shoulder, in my split jerk, in my push presses, in my strict presses. What do I do? So there's a step-by-step process that I take that I'm going to let you in on. The first place I start has nothing to do with the injury, the pain, whatever it is. The first thing I look at is the programming. What does the programming look like in the last month? Is it a higher volume? Is it a heavier intensity, right? So just looking at, the programming and how that might be influencing right now their shoulder. Did we have a higher volume month and their shoulder wasn't ready for it, right? They didn't have that time under tension capacity built up and their shoulder just wasn't ready for it, right? So maybe there's nothing really wrong with the shoulder. It's just that the programming happens to be maybe a little too much for the shoulder that month. So that's the first place I look at, right? And let's say we do identify something that is, from programming related, right? Something that I might believe in the programming that is causing this to happen or could be causing this. We back down a little bit. We take the volume down, take the intensity down, whatever it is that we're finding. So that's step number one. Okay, step number two. What is their outside life look like? Is their recovery going well? Is there a lot of stressors in their life at that time, right? These things really influence weightlifting more than we realize. And if we're having pain, it influences our ability to heal, right? Because these things can continue to perpetuate whatever the problem is. So that's step number two. These are very easy things to look at before we even consider what's going on with that shoulder. So yeah, the next step is clearly looking into what is the problem, right? Is there a specific diagnosis that I can give to that shoulder? Is there a specific area of the shoulder that is involved where the pain is coming from, right? Can we identify the root cause, the source of the pain? And then I just as an understanding, right? Just to understand what's happening, what caused it, and then where to go from there. Now, the first thing people might think of is, okay, time to shut it down, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then we'll come back and hopefully it's better. This is probably the worst thing that we can do as coaches is to tell our weightlifters is to shut it down. Here's why. All you're doing is avoiding the actual problem. So if their problem came about because of weightlifting and you're just avoiding weightlifting, and then you come back to weightlifting a few weeks later, the problem is still there. Whatever caused it in the first place is still there. And I would argue it's even worse now because at least before you were conditioned enough to be able to somewhat handle it. Now you're completely deconditioned. So now you're in a worse spot off than you were before. So the answer is never to shut down, right? And I'll give you another example. Let's say somebody's having the shoulder pain and they think shut down. Most people think just don't exercise. There's nothing wrong with your lower body, right? So if all else fails, you can still be doing lower body exercises that don't put stress on the shoulder, right? We want to almost not forget about our intuition, not forget about our common sense and what it's telling us. But that example aside, what other variables I as the coach look at and say, maybe we adjust some of these variables to keep them training, right? Because I don't want them to take time off. So a couple things I can look at. First thing that I typically look at with my weightlifters, so let's circle back to this example of shoulder pain. Somebody's having shoulder pain with a split jerk or any overhead movement for that matter. The first thing I want to look at, in addition to those things mentioned before, which are, what is the volume and what does the training look like? What does the programming look like? What does the recovery look like? The outside factors. When we take all that aside and we say we've already looked at those things, the next thing I might want to look at is, the actual technique parameters, right? So what is the depth that we're doing? Is it completely when you're overhead push pressing, right? Can we still press with the shoulder? Maybe it's not overhead, but we look at different variables, right? Like just like in a squat, you would look at maybe how deep is the squat? Where are the toes pointed? In the shoulder example, we might want to look at like, okay, maybe pressing directly overhead is a problem. Can we press at all? Can I press, or like a bench press is a great example. Can I press horizontally instead of just vertically? Is that going to make a difference? Is the amount of weight that we're putting on the bar going to make a difference, right? So the load, does this pain come on only at 60% or higher? Can we train at 50% without having that pain come on? So different technique variables that come into play. Maybe the angle of our shoulder, maybe the grip, the width of the barbell, right? So if I have a pretty standard width on my grip and it feels kind of crappy, can I widen the grip or narrow the grip and make it feel better? If so, that actually tells us a lot about, what's going on with the shoulder, if they can do that and it feels better. So all these things are really just like the technical detail, right? The grip, the amount of weight on the bar. The other thing we can look at is the implement we're using, right? So maybe it's the barbell that's the problem, this bilateral movement that's causing the pain. So looking at, can I use a dumbbell? Can I use a kettlebell? Single arm work. Is that going to make it feel better? Is pressing overhead really the issue? Or is it pressing overhead with a barbell bilaterally that's putting our shoulder in a rotated position as well as overhead? Is that the problem? So maybe we interchange it and try a dumbbell, for example. And that dumbbell work, maybe it's like a half kneeling overhead shoulder press. And that feels better, okay? So regardless of what we choose, all of this allows us to still train. Are we training at 100% of what we can do? No. Are we going to still be on the exact same track as we were before with normal split jerks with a barbell? Probably not, right? We're going to have to adjust something, whatever we found in that exam, right? It could be that we found that the implement was the problem. So for right now, we are going to have to use kettlebells. Maybe it was the weight and we have to train at 60% instead of, 80, 90% like we wanted to. Maybe it's the angle, right? So as an example, as you start to think about what can we do, maybe the angle was a problem. So we might have to do a landmine shoulder press, right? That puts us at a 45-degree angle overhead. So yeah, we're still shoulder pressing, but we're maybe not stacking it completely overhead. And that's okay. But the goal is, can we change some of these variables to find a painless way to move and still maintain our strength, right? So we still want to maintain some level of overhead pressing or some level of pressing without completely shutting down. Here's where the best part comes in, right? So we're not just going to do that forever, right? I think we think, oh my God, like I got a landmine press or half kneel kettlebell press for the rest of my life. No, right? This is where the best part comes in. In that time frame where we are doing this modification, we're also spending the other half that time finding the root cause or the underlying issue and working on it. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of things that could be causing this. Is it a mobility problem? Maybe the right shoulder versus the left shoulder. The right shoulder is not as mobile overhead. And so you're jamming that shoulder into an overhead position and it wasn't ready for it. Or it's just, for some reason, it's not there. Then as we're working on whatever that modification we found to be painless is, we're now also focusing on a mobility routine that is going to help improve overhead shoulder mobility on that side so that we can restore normal motion and then we can reintegrate that barbell back at whatever the normal programming was back into play. Okay, so that we're still working on these things in the meantime. Let's say it was some kind of weird asymmetry where the left side wasn't as stable as the right, or maybe the left side wasn't as strong as the right. Maybe we have to work on these stability drills or these strength drills to restore balance between the two. That way there's not a weird asymmetry going on that's causing this sort of pain. So the key here is going to be, as I recap here, let's look at just the common sense intuition things. What does their life look like? What did the programming look like? Could it just be that they're overtraining? Could it just be that they were undertraining and then quickly overtraining? Is there some sort of training issue going on? Second thing we look at is, can we control different variables? Can we change the weight on the bar? Can we change the positioning of their arms? Can we change the implement to something different to make it feel better? And in the meantime, as we're addressing all these things and we find what's actually going to work for them, let's address what's that root cause in the meantime so that we can transition them back to the barbell, back to standard programming, so that they don't have any of these issues again. This is why I love the position that I'm in as a coach. So my background is as a rehab specialist and as a weightlifting coach. I was a weightlifting coach first. I became a physical therapist later on down the road. And I have now combined the two of these to make sure they have this flawless system where they're not going back and forth between rehab and training, and they're not shutting things down for weeks at a time. This is crucial. So if you're a weightlifter out there watching this, I'm going to give you one piece of advice, and that is just to find that person for you. Find that person that, if you're serious about weightlifting, find that person that can guide you like this, that can give you all that you need to continue to train, because this is going to happen, right? All the time we want to say we can prevent all injuries, we can prevent all pain. The reality is, sure, maybe we can limit what happens through the right fundamentals, but there's things that are going to happen. It's inevitable. It's an inevitable part of training. And it is our job to find that right person who can guide us through times when it's hard like that, when we are going through these things and it's physically challenging, it's mentally challenging, just to find that person who can guide us through it, that has the knowledge, the expertise to be able to do that. If you're looking for that person, of course, my door is always open as well. You can certainly follow me on Instagram at YIANNI. That's my name, Yanni, _Oli PR Formance, and kind of check out my content. I dive into this topic a lot on my page. I also have a lot of weightlifters who have gone through this. So I've guided weightlifters through this. So if you're dealing with this right now, certainly feel free to message me. Again, like I said, my door is always open, and we can talk about what plan makes the most sense for you.